January 9th, 2018 meeting of the Downers Grove Village Council. It is my privilege to call this meeting to order. If you haven't already done so, there are copies of our agenda on either side of the room. Please feel free to pick up a copy and you can follow along with tonight's proceedings. There will be multiple opportunities for public comment, both with respect to items that are on tonight's agenda, as well as a segment we have under item 5 that is delegated for questions and comments of a general nature with respect to things that are not on tonight's agenda. When we get to that point in the evening, I'll invite any members of the audience who wish to do so to please come up, and we'd love to hear from you. But first, it is our proud custom to begin our meetings by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. So at this juncture, I'd like to ask everyone present to please rise and join us in reciting the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much for joining us. And with that, I would like to ask our fine village clerk, April Holden, to please call the roll. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Commissioner Wallace?
Here.
Commissioner Earl? Here. Commissioner Waldeck?
Here.
Commissioner White?
Here.
Commissioner Jose? Commissioner Barnett?
Here.
Mayor Tully?
Here. Thank you very much. That brings us to item 3, which pertains to minutes of prior council meetings. We have one set of minutes to review and approve tonight. Those are our council meeting minutes from our regular village council meeting dated December 19th, 2017. If there are no changes, questions, comments, or corrections, I will entertain a motion to approve, please.
Mr. Tully, I move that this council approve the meeting minutes from December 19th, 2017 as presented.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Those minutes are approved. That brings us to item 4 on our agenda, and I see our village manager, David Fieldman, approaching the podium with some very important words. Happy New Year, Mr. Fieldman.
Happy New Year, Mayor Tully and Council. It is my honor and privilege to introduce Shannon Gillette as the Downers Grove Chief of Police. Chief Gillette has held a variety of positions in our police department, from community-oriented policing officer through field training officer, patrol sergeant, lieutenant, deputy chief, you name it. He has served in that capacity, and he has served us quite well. In 2016, Chief Gillette graduated from the FBI National Academy in Quantico, Virginia, where he received advanced leadership training for law enforcement executives. He's also a graduate of Northwestern University's School of Police Staff and Command, where he was honored with the Center for Public Safety's Franklin M. Kreml Leadership Award. Shannon is exactly that, a leader. He also holds a Master's of Science degree in Public Administration and a Bachelor of Arts from Benedictine University. He is joined tonight by his family, his wife Debbie, and his 2 daughters, Amy and Ella. And we will now proceed with the swearing in of Chief Gillette.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Shannon L. Gillette,
I, Shannon L. Gillette,
having been appointed to the office of police chief
having been appointed to the office of police chief
in the village of Downers Grove,
in the village of Downers Grove,
in the county of DuPage,
in the county of DuPage,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of police chief
of the office of police chief
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my abilities. Suspense is killing me.
Chief, if you'd like, a few words, please.
Thank you, Mayor Tully, members of council, Manager Fieldman, good evening and Happy New Year. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity to serve the village of Downers Grove as your police chief. For the past 24 years, it has been an honor and a privilege to serve alongside the dedicated men and women of the Downers Grove Police Department. Our team works hard every day to ensure that the police department remains a source of pride in our community, and you have my commitment to carry on that tradition of excellence. I'd like to take a moment to thank my family, my wife Debbie, my daughters Amy and Ella. Thank you for your love, your support, and your patience. Mostly patience, especially when they're waiting for cake. But I am blessed beyond measure to share this journey with them. I'd also like to thank my coworkers, friends, and mentors who have made personal investments into my professional development as well as my own personal development. You have taught me how to be a leader in this organization and to lead with character, with integrity, and with discipline. So thank you for that. So Mayor Tully, members of council, and Manager Fieldman, thank you. I'm excited and I'm ready to get to work.
Thank you very much, Chief Gillette, and welcome and congratulations. We have been truly blessed in Downers Grove to have outstanding fire department, police department, and a testament to the leadership and the long line of leaders and the deep depth of talent that we have here in Downers Grove with our first responders is demonstrated every single day. We have a lot of it here in the room today, and I'm also struck by some of the folks we have in the audience who are here to witness this. Former chiefs, we have former Chief Bluter, former Deputy Chief Church, former Deputy Chief Buds, former Chief Porter. We're all here, as well as State Representative David Olson and DuPage County State's Attorney Robert Berlin. It is very important to make sure that public safety is always paramount in everyone's minds, and everything that Chief Gillette said is absolutely true. I was commenting in the audience earlier today that in the almost 16 years that I've been involved with the Village Council, it has never been even a moment's hesitation of concern with respect to the quality of professionalism and capabilities of our first responders in this community. I've never heard anyone in the community ever voiced that as a concern as to, my goodness, I'm concerned about the quality, the professionalism, the capabilities of our first responders. We've become truly blessed for many decades now to have such a long line of outstanding, exceptional public servants on both the police and the fire side, such that we can do things like have a highly regarded, well-respected chief leave. And while obviously we miss him or her, knowing that there is so much depth and breadth of talent within the organizations on both sides, that someone can step up of the extreme caliber and quality of Shannon Gillette and be our chief and do that with folks before him as well, is truly a testament to the outstanding nature of the organizations that we are so glad and blessed to have here in Downers Grove. So congratulations, Chief Gillette. I know that you will continue that proud legacy going forward here in Downers Grove. And once again, it leaves the Village Council to be able to worry about other things. We can argue about the stupid stuff up here because we know that every day, the really important things you men and women are taking care of every day, and the citizens of Downers Grove thank you for that as well. So congratulations and thank you very much, Chief. Look forward to working with you. Well, we can't top that, so we're just going to adjourn now. No, well, we do have an agenda, so thank you for everybody who came out to honor Chief Gillette. We greatly appreciate it. Good to see so many familiar faces. Thank you for coming. As mentioned earlier, now we have item 5, which is reserved for public comments. If there are members of the audience that have questions or comments of a general nature with respect to items not on tonight's agenda, I would invite you to please come to the podium, and we welcome hearing from you. And yes, while folks are coming up here, there is going to be a reception immediately after our meeting. In fact, I think it's starting right now. The much advertised cake will be available celebrating Chief Gillette's swearing in. Good evening, welcome.
Good evening, members of the council. Happy New Year to you all. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. My name is Pat Ravel. I live at 5410. Thank you. Grand Avenue, Downers Grove. It has been a long time since I was here. And the reason why I am here is, in my opinion, is important. I have a double-sized lot on Grand Avenue, and then the lot next to me, north of me, the house was demolished and construction had begun late of last year by Oakley Home Builders. So I observed, and then I noticed that the front part of the yard of this new house under construction, even up to my fence, it was 3 feet at the tip, and it slopes down up to the side of my fence. I have a fence all around this double lot, and I said to myself, if they would not do this 3 feet slope, the water would get down to the edge of the lot, and it would go to my lot, the front of the house, because the side of the fence on the other side is higher, and so where would the water go? It would go to my lot, and then it's just like this, and after that the water would drip down, and then it would go to my lot, which is lower than the construction. And so I thought, I had a meeting with Mr. Sandman, and I wrote a letter dated December 11, and I meet with him, and I talked to him, and he came and he saw it, and I told him the reason why. And so I told him that I would be talking to a lawyer, which I did. And so he said he would mail this letter to Oakley Home Builders. Now my point is this, why I am here. I feel that home builders should be considerate of what would happen just in case if they build the lot, and what would happen to the lot next door. It happened to me because my house, the house next to it, which is 5420 Grand Avenue, owned by attorney Victoria Mashifen, when it was built, the builder, this was like 17 years ago, we were new here. The builder, he built the driveway, the end of the driveway 3 feet above the normal line, and so the fence became useless. It was only like 1 foot. My point is this, I don't want, based from the article here from the Suburban Life, some residents of Downers Grove are so concerned about the drainage and the flood. That is my number one concern, because if these people, and then Mr. Simon said that there would be a swell. I said, how deep is the swell? 4 inches? What, 4 inches? 4 inches is like this. And I said, that's why in my letter, I said I wanted to know how deep and what would they do, because if they would just dig a little bit of dirt, and then erosion of the soil would cover that, and then down it goes. And my lawyer said that just keep an eye when there's a heavy rain or things like that, watch for your lot, because if you have a flood, then I will file a suit against the Downers Grove Village, against the builder, and against the owner of the house. I feel that the builder should not just build the property that they have contract with. They have to think of what is good for the village and for the people who live next door, not what they want because of the money that is involved. That's why I am here. Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll keep an of it too. It sounds like this is still under construction.
You have to see it, sir, because if you live next door and then it's like this and it rains and it goes, all the water would go to your lot. I do not know if you can smile.
No, I'm not smiling, ma'am. I'm letting you know that we'll keep an eye on it too, because as I understand it, this is still under construction and the final grading hasn't been done, so there might be...
Yeah, but my point is this. Builders in Downers Grove, they should respect the people who live in Downers Grove, people who own the property. They cannot just build, and they don't give a damn.
Okay,
Excuse me.
No worries. We'll keep an eye on it too and make sure that the swale is put in appropriately. Thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. Other questions or comments of a general nature from members of the audience? Hearing none, we'll move to our consent agenda, which is item 6. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Mayor Tully, I move that this council approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Questions or comments from members of the audience with respect to any of the items on tonight's consent agenda? Questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Hearing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl? Aye. Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. Consent agenda passes unanimously. We have no active agenda tonight, so we'll skip through item 7 and go right to item 8, which is our first reading or our workshop agenda. This is a less formal portion of our meeting where items are presented for discussion and consideration purposes only. No final action will be taken on any of these items tonight. Typically what we do is ask representative staff to introduce the item and then allow for any petitioner that may be associated with the item to speak, and then the council will entertain questions or comments, and we'll flip it back to the audience for any input or questions or comments that they may have. So with that, I see Mr. Popovich moving towards the podium, but I'll let Manager Fieldman introduce things. Happy New Year once again, Mr. Fieldman.
Happy New Year. We have 3 items on tonight's first reading agenda. The first one is an ordinance regarding a special use in the 4800 block of Highland Avenue. And here to present background information on this petition is our Community Development Director, Stan Popovich.
Good evening, Mr. Popovich. Happy New Year.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Happy New Year to each of you as well. As Manager Fieldman noted, this is a special use request with a variation for 4832 Highland Avenue, better known as St. Joseph School. It's located here on Main Street, just north of the downtown. If we look at the campus, it is on either side of Main Street, here between Prairie and Franklin. On the west side, you may remember they've just recently constructed a parking lot. And on the east side, we have the church at Prairie and Main, and then we have a school at the southeast corner of the property. What the petitioner is doing is, this is a current site plan that shows you everything that's there. This church, office, and school. The petitioner proposes to build an addition in the southwest corner of the school there to connect the 2 wings in essence. This would also help out with some accessibility issues, putting in some accessible bathrooms. There's different floor levels based on when the buildings were built, so this would, in essence, tie everything in together, and additionally with 3 classrooms. And then the variation request is to keep the addition in line with the school that's existing there. So you can see the addition in graphic form here would be in line with the school. The existing setback's just under 9 feet from the south property line. If we were to go back to 25 feet as would be required by the zoning ordinance, it wouldn't make the school flow and the addition flow with what the needs of the school are. And then here's an elevation, so you can sort of, or a nice sketch, you can sort of see this is where the addition will be. It's a very modern addition, but in terms of massing, it's at about the same height as the existing school buildings there, so it'll fit in really well with the building existing. There's going to be some outdoor space there, some green roof. It's a very sustainable proposal that they're proposing to do with the addition there as well. And then here's another look from the ground view as well, so you can see how that blends in with the existing school. With regard to the comprehensive plan, it's an institutional use. Schools are institutional. The comp plan talks about promoting continued operation and improvement to schools and limit the impact on adjacent residential areas. Staff believes all of these goals have been met with the comp plan. And additionally, the standards have been met for special use and the variation in staff's opinion. The architect for the St. Joseph's is here tonight. If there's any questions that I can't answer, that he might be able to answer for you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Popovich. I don't know if there's any further comments or statements from the petitioner at this point in time. Certainly no obligation, but want to give the opportunity. All right, very good. Then I'll open it up for questions or comments from members of the council. No questions or comments from the council at this point in time. Any questions or comments from members of the audience? Any final questions or comments from members of the village council? No, it's January. They're still rusty. Give them a couple months to warm up. Thank you, Mr. Popovich.
Thank you.
Bring us to 8B, please.
8B is an amendment to theater license provisions. Here to present information on this item is our village attorney, Enza Petrarca.
Good evening, Ms. Petrarca. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Mayor. Good evening. The proposed ordinance is an ordinance amending the Class T liquor license to expand the liquor service to allow liquor service during regularly scheduled movies. Currently, Class T liquor license is restricted to rented theater events or special events at the Tivoli. The Tivoli has requested to expand that service so that they can serve alcohol during regularly scheduled movies. The ordinance does contain a restriction to only one drink served per person, and it does require an expanded concession to require food service as well. That is all. It did receive approval and a recommendation from the Liquor Commission at its last Liquor Commission meeting, and with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Any questions or comments from members of the council? Commissioner Waldeck, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Mayor, and all. Felt so safe before when all the police were here. First off,
Chief Gillette's still here, so you're good.
left to join for cake. First off, I'd like to say that I was disappointed with the draft notes from the Liquor Commission that seemed to be rather empty on questions and follow-up and so forth. Thus, I wound up asking some questions prior to the meeting, and it's listed in the council responses. But I wish the Liquor Commission would have done more. Downers Grove it's a unique village, and I know there's comments about other communities are doing this. We need to do this. We need to be competitive. And I get all that, but Downers Grove is unique. And if we base all of our decisions on what the neighbors are doing, then it becomes an automatic race to the bottom. And that's not what I want. And I don't think that's what our residents want either. We have a duty to make not just millennials happy, but to make all of our residents safe, and that includes children and adults in their use of alcohol and other behaviors. So we do have a duty there. In reading this, under Section 3.33C, it would become lawful for the Tivoli to have performances of and then in there is a list of number of sex acts. Also simulation of the same, and I realize that there are movies, but you could have live performances. Those comments are changed from movies to classifying things as events, which could mean live performances. I have a concern with that. I understand competition. We also need to maintain standards, and we need to be fair. Other purveyors of alcohol, which are solely for adults, cannot provide adult entertainment. Yet, what I see here, the way I read this, is we are going to allow a purveyor of alcohol who has, rather than just for adults, the presence of children. This isn't a meal. Nachos are not a meal. I was on this council years ago when the big argument was serving alcohol adjunct to a meal. Well, that's long gone. But really, nachos and pretzels really don't constitute much of a meal at all. Things that happen at the Tivoli, there's a wide range of entertainment. Movies rated G, all the way up through R. I've never seen or posted an X-rated movie, and I don't think they're allowed. I'm not sure. But anyway, it goes all the way up to R. And on various days, Saturdays, parents like to maybe take their kids and maybe some of their friends, and they give them some money and they purchase tickets to go see a movie. And and some concession, some snacks, and they go to a movie and they drop them off and tell them they'll pick them up at 3:30 or whatever time the show ends. It's a safe setting. And now what we're being asked to do is to allow alcohol into the picture. And I do have some concerns. Bear with me here as I go through my notes. Do adults need to have alcohol even at a showing of Bambi? I mean, really? Is that really necessary? Are there not enough places in Downers Grove to get a drink? And I'm more concerned with a G rating and the abundance of children attending those types of films and the presence presence of alcohol, where there isn't much protection. I think there is a definite lack of control over the sale of alcohol. What you have is somebody, whether the bar is permanent or whether it's portable, you have someone who is trained, but trained to what? Give alcohol to someone who is going to take it back into a darkened 1,000-seat arena. It's quite possible that a 21-year-old, 22-year-old, whatever, can purchase alcohol and bring it back to their 18-year-old date. And there's just not enough controls in that environment, and I do have a problem with that. Experience shows that trained waitresses and waiters in our other venues that sell alcohol, they don't have a 1,000 or 500 even. They have enough trouble trying to maintain proper controls over a dozen. We still have a lot of reports of overselling, violations. Things happen, and that's when you actually have table service, people watching, and still people get out and they get in their cars and they get in accidents, or they just drive under the influence and maybe they get home by luck. But it's hard enough to control that in a minimum setting, let alone such a large dark setting. And so I think we need to put some possible restrictions on this. I could see possibly serving alcohol in when there are ratings that are over PG-14 or maybe just PG. Definitely not during G-rated performances. Possibly a time consideration, let's say after 6 o'clock, or depending on the movie, maybe 5:30, or just the later showings, rather than an early showing where children are more likely to attend, let's say PG-14 performance, or even with R ratings where it's 18. I think 18-year-olds understand alcohol. They may not be able to legally buy it, but they're around it. They discuss it enough, I'm sure, so they're more familiar. But when the kids are around, I'd say just keep it to the evenings. And if we decide to loosen up those controls that we currently have, then I think in order to be fair, we have to provide the same sort of controls in other venues that sell alcohol. For example, the Park District. They have concession stands. They sell food. It's outdoors. It's light. So what better way to sell alcohol at a baseball game or a soccer game? Mom and Dad would love to sit there and enjoy a beer and watch their kids play. That's a possibility. Rotary Fest. Why not be able to sell hard liquor? Why confine the drinkers to a confined area where they can get up and drink their fill, by walking, 50 feet or so? They can just refill and refill. If you would allow it, if we're not worried about kids and being around alcohol, why? And at Rotary Fest, you got food all over the place. Somebody could buy their drink and wind up on Curtis and Main. It's a long way to get a refill, so it's probably safer than the 50 feet or so you can go at a theater or somewhere else. And we should also review our restrictions on other, bars and other places that serve alcohol. We should give them the same controls or lack of controls that we would at a theater. Just my opinion. Like I'd say, I have a problem with it as presented, and I'd like to see some modifications to it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments from members of the council? Commissioner Earl.
Going back to some of the points Commissioner Waldeck made, I do have some concerns that the Tivoli in of itself, the newer theaters are set up for better monitoring and delivery of alcohol. I understand that is the way things are moving, but I have been to some theaters where the alcohol consumption is confined to the lobby, just so that because policing a 1,000-seat auditorium and passing alcohol to minors is not something you want to happen. So I would be more inclined to support this ordinance if it had something along those provisions. And I would also like to keep the alcohol sales separate from the regular concession sales. I think that when you're in the line for alcohol to get a drink, that's what you're there for. And if you're getting something else, you're in a different line. And I think that that kind of separates the expectations and kind of speeds things along for everybody. And then those people who wish to have a beverage, an alcoholic beverage, before they go into a movie, then can enjoy it and then go in and sit down and enjoy their movie. You know, most of the time movies aren't more than 2 hours long, so it's not an extended period of time. I'm not thinking you're going to be really in there for more than one, tops two. But I don't see that it's a good idea at this point, just the way it's set up to have the consumption happen in the dark 1,000-seat theater with no real easy way to police it. So that's just my feelings on it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments from members of the council? Commissioner Wallace?
Thank you. Can I ask a question regarding food? If there is alcohol involved now, will the food selection change or grow to accommodate said alcohol consumption?
Yes, it is my understanding that the Tivoli will be expanding their concession to provide additional food items. Mr. Johnson is also in the audience if you have specific questions about that food service, so he could probably answer those questions better. But yes, it is my understanding that food service is a requirement of this.
Thank you. Other questions or comments from members of the council? Commissioner Barnett?
The lack of control, as I'm understanding it, this is really a question for Marge and Bill, is not at the sale point. It's the consumption within the theater. That's what the concern is. That's your concern, right? Is that, Bill, are you on the same page with that?
I don't think he heard you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Bill, Marge was saying one of her concerns was the lack of control on the consumption end of things. So after the purchase, which is a normal transaction, but it's inside the theater. Is that what your primary concern is also?
Yes, it's controlled at the... Yeah, I would prefer not to have it in a darkened, consumed in a darkened area like that. But, also, just the sale of alcohol where there, for example, at a G-rated movie, not that Bambi's coming back, maybe it will, but, you know, do we really need to have all these kids in a venue with the alcohol sales? I think, you know, one of the examples was where a lot of parents drop their kids off and they pick them up at a certain time, and it's a safe area. You know, it's a safe venue. And I think advertising it as a safe venue might be a good thing. But yeah, just the presence of alcohol amongst all the kids. That's why we have restrictions at Rotary Fest. We don't want people wandering around with alcohol, or, you know, with the kids and all that. So yeah, I'd like to. I don't know if I might go along with Commissioner Earl's idea of having consumption in the lobby. But I'd also like to restrict it either in the evenings or depending on the rating of the of the entertainment that's being offered. Special events are different, and we've been able to accommodate those quite well, but now we're talking regular movies. Does that seem to answer it?
Yeah, I'm trying to think about how that might actually happen. I don't share the same concerns, but I'm trying to think through the Tivoli, and if you guys want to jump in here, that'd be fine. I'm just thinking the idea that I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of a consumer, and if I go buy a ticket to a 2.5-hour movie, I'm not likely to, stand in the foyer and shotgun my beer so I can make sure I watch the movie. That doesn't make a lot of sense. It seems like it's different. It's not like you're milling around the. I don't know. It just seems like a strange. I understand the concern. I'm not trying to ignore the concern. The idea that the solution is consumption within the lobby doesn't seem like a very reasonable solution to me. I just don't. I'm having a hard time getting to the same spot of concern that you guys are.
Well, I don't. In my opinion, I don't need to have to restrict it to consumption in the lobby, but necessarily. But I am concerned about the sale and bringing it back in during a movie to a darkened area.
Those are reasonable.
That's basic sale rather than just consumption.
Those are reasonable concerns to me. I'm not sure I weigh them as heavily, but I understand them. The part of the conversation that I was really not able to follow was some of the comments about need. I don't know that as we sit up here and evaluate ordinances, the definition of need for consumption makes a lot of sense. I mean, does anybody need to have a beer ever? Arguably no. But big dark theater, it probably does give some pause.
Thanks, Commissioner. Other questions, comments, Council?
Thank you.
Sure, please, Commissioner.
I did address the 3.33, where there's a list of different types of entertainment that are not allowed at other venues, and it just seems that it makes it wide open for a theater.
No, the way that's written, or the intent of that, is to, if some of those acts occur in a R-rated movie, it is not considered a violation. That's how that's written, because we're recognizing that some R-rated movies may have some sexual content that would not automatically constitute a violation. That was the amendment to that section. That's all that was meant to do. It does not allow any live performances. It does not expand any of that. It's just simply to allow the showing of R-rated movies and allow alcohol service at the same time.
And I understand the intent, but I don't know, it seems like the way I read it, it also allows the live performances and the types of things that you don't allow at other venues.
I will double check that, but certainly that is definitely not the intent. I will take a closer look at that and amend that for next week if that's the case, to clarify that, because clearly that is not the intent and not what we wanted to do.
Yeah, we don't want to necessarily go back to burlesque. Okay.
Thank you. The ability to sell liquor in the Village of Downers Grove is a privilege. It's not a right. And it's something that we take very seriously and always have, and try to be very mindful of the downsides of allowing that privilege. And for those that abuse that privilege, I think the record will show that we act swiftly and severely. There are members of this council who have served in the Liquor Commission. I've served as the Liquor Commissioner for 7 years. I can speak firsthand to, I think, this community's views on the sale and consumption of alcohol and the need for rules that promote the responsible sale and handling of alcohol. Those who handle it and responsibly are on one side, and then you have those who occasionally do not, and we take action when we need to. So to me, it's really about the demonstrated responsible handling of the sale of liquor. And I want to start off with the petitioner has a long history here of being almost exemplary when it comes to the responsible handling of liquor. I believe, if I read the minutes correctly, that if you add in the Tivoli Bowl, there's been a license for some 16 years with respect to the sale of alcohol. And I used to bowl there when I was in high school. So there have always been children in the presence of the sale of alcohol with respect to the Tivoli Bowl, and I can't think of a problem in the time that I've been mayor, that's for sure. I don't recall, and probably the village attorney can remind me, how long has it been that the T license has been in existence? It's probably at least 10 years.
2001.
Oh, my goodness gracious. So, all right, 15 years. The Tivoli Theater has actually been selling alcohol at special events, which include movies which attract children. I believe there was just a big Star Wars event which attracted a whole bunch of children. And alcohol was, I believe, as part of a special event sold at that event. Since 2001, I cannot think of a single instance of a problem that has taken place with respect to the sale of alcohol at special events, which have included on numerous occasions movies that attract a lot of children. I think it's a testament to the Tivoli. I think it's a testament to the community that people have been able to behave themselves. So what I look at first and foremost is the demonstrated responsibility of the person who's making the request. And I can't think of a better record than the one we're looking at here. So I understand some of the concerns and some of the demons here, but they just haven't been shown to actually have happened in a long track record. And I also don't think that we should just do something because another community does it. But if you look at the other theaters that, yes, they're not historic treasures like the Tivoli. They were built a little bit more recently and therefore set up a little bit differently. But I'm not aware of a lot of problems in neighboring communities from the theaters that sell alcohol where there are movies that have children. And last time I checked, all those theaters were darkened. We just don't see those problems happening. I might have a greater sympathy for some of the concerns that have been expressed, but this isn't something new that's never happened before. This is something that's been going on for over 15 years, and we just haven't seen these problems occur. It kind of reminds me of when the very first, now I'm really going to date myself, when the very first request for a sidewalk cafe license was requested. This would allow somebody to sit outside of an establishment and have a beer or a glass of wine. I remember colleagues of mine at that time voicing concerns that where is the control? Who is going to be keeping an eye on these folks? Someone might hand a glass of wine over the railing to a minor. And to my knowledge, that's never happened. Primarily because no one's going to buy a $16 glass of wine and hand it to a minor. That's not what minors do. I was a minor once. Trust me, that's not how it works. So I hear the concerns, and I imagine that we could legislate to the lowest common denominator here, but I just don't see any of this ever actually manifesting itself in a concern, either in this community, in other communities, or with this particular petitioner. And we're only talking about one theater license in the entire village, so there's only one entity that we're talking about here, and that's the Tivoli. So that's kind of where I come from, although we did, to Commissioner Wallace's point, request that there be additional food service made available. And that is something that the petitioner, as I understand it, is providing. Certainly they can provide more details as to the nature of the food. But I also want to look at the issue of traditional versus non-traditional. I mentioned the sidewalk cafe issue where we hadn't had that before in Downers Grove, and it was a new thing, and there were some concerns about, oh my goodness, people will be sitting outside having a beer or drinking a glass of wine. What's going to happen? Well, clearly nothing has happened. Other communities have done it, and we didn't go along with it at the time because other communities were doing it. They served as a data point. We were able to see, well, how has this been working in other communities? And we looked around and saw there weren't any problems. So this is an issue, not an issue here in Downers Grove, and it hasn't been an issue in Downers Grove. But at that time, that was new. And we have other non-traditional sales of alcohol in this town. And there's a grand opening for a business called the Fun Zone that's coming up, I believe, in a few weeks. Some of my colleagues will probably be there for the ribbon cutting. It's oriented for children. They have a liquor license. The business that was there before for years, I believe, had a liquor license. It's kind of I don't want to say another corporate name, but it's a place where you go when there's games and entertainment. It's primarily for children, but the liquor's for the adults. And the business that was there before was able to behave themselves. The people who patronize the place behave themselves. And I have every expectation that this new business will behave themselves. If they don't, then we have ways of dealing with that. It's called fines, sanctions, or in some cases, we withdraw their license. We keep an eye on this stuff. We do controlled buys. We remind people who hold liquor licenses that it is a privilege. It's not a right, and it is one that needs to be demonstrated responsibly at all points in time. I mentioned the Tivoli Bowl, which has been there forever, since well before I was in high school. The Board and Brush that just opened up downtown. I know, Commissioner Waldeck, you're the liaison to the Downtown Management Corporation. I believe the Board and Brush is very successful. Now, it's not darkened and it's not children, but it's a non-traditional setting in which alcohol is available for sale when people are painting. We're not just sort of throwing the rules out the window here. What we're doing is we're looking at what are the trends, what are things that we can do to responsibly promote commerce in our community. And if the applicants have a reasonable proposal and they have demonstrated to be responsible merchants with respect to the sale and handling of alcohol, then I think we should, as our motto is to be facilitators of business and commerce in our community, not overly regulators. So I'm not troubled by the non-traditional, although here, quite frankly, I don't think it's non-traditional at all, because we do have a demonstrated track record in other communities, and including this petitioner themselves, once again, of responsibly controlling and selling alcohol in an environment, in a darkened theater where there are children, and we have not seen any problems. So while I hear and understand the concerns, again, it's worth repeating, we have actual experience on which to draw from, and I just don't see any of these phantoms appearing here. So I don't have a problem with it, and I think it's something that if we can help keep a business in town competitive in a responsible manner, then why not? Commissioner White, you just wanted to stop me talking, didn't you?
Well, yes. I actually have a very specific hypothetical controlled by scenario, and I would ask whether the petitioner is aware of this possibility and would it be a violation. So here's a scenario. Under police supervision, a person aged 21 or older buys a beer or a glass of wine, walks down the darkened aisle about halfway down, sits down, hands it to a 19-year-old companion, who then picks up that beer, doesn't drink it, but walks up the aisle and hands it to a police officer. Would that violate the liquor license?
It would.
Because actually, I think it should.
Well, I guess that...
And that's the controlled by scenario that gets at the heart of what the other ones are saying. Because if that can be prevented, if that type of scenario can be prevented, where a 21-year-old buys a beer, walks down the aisle, hands it to a 19-year-old companion, if that can be prevented, then many of my concerns are alleviated. And I believe places like Hollywood Bowl, the wait staff is trained because they walk in front of every table. So that, to me, at this moment, and if we did approve this, I would like the police to run a controlled buy with that scenario, and I would like that to be a violation. If it was shown that a 19-year-old walked up the other aisle and, officer, here's the beer. So, so I'm not ready to decide, and I think it's too early to give long speeches why it's such a great idea, because there's questions that aren't answered yet. But I think I totally agree with the economics that we got to find a way to make it work. But we got to put conditions and controls on it so we can do it safely.
Well, I hear that, and I'm sorry for the long speech, but I was actually kind of surprised by the pushback on this, because there's just no evidence to support some of the concerns, with all due respect to my colleagues.
If they can lose their license if this happens, then I'm fine.
Well, but then you have to open up the question and go back to the sidewalk cafe. So if at one of our sidewalk cafes, are you going to have a controlled buy where someone hands something over the railing? Are you going to go into Angelo's Pizza and do the same thing? You could do that in any restaurant that has a wait staff. I don't understand the difference. Something about the lighting level in the room doesn't suddenly make it a violation. If we're going to have a conversation about overhauling our entire liquor ordinances, what are violations, then I think we need to have a much broader conversation. This particular situation, I'm sorry if I went on and on, but I'm a little baffled because there's just zero evidence to support it.
Rather than just talking, I want to bring up another specific
we can come up with hypotheticals.
No, but just so I understand what the rules are here. If you're in a restaurant, say Three Corners or another round, and a group of people are sitting at the table, one of them is 19, 4 of them are 21, is it a violation of the liquor license for the table to allow the 19-year-old to drink at that table?
Yes.
So that...
Therefore the same would hold true if you were allowing a minor to...
So...
It already does.
Well, but when I asked the question a minute ago, they wasn't sure, the answer wasn't clear, that my controlled by scenario where they hand it to the 19-year-old.
Well, we don't typically handle control buys in that situation.
Right.
That's not the control buy that...
Or in your scenario, maybe 19-year-olds with handing to the police officer to report a violation.
Yeah. If there was a minor drinking in the establishment, it would be a violation of the liquor.
Yeah. I guess my point right now is I need to think about this and get some more information.
Well, I can tell you all the information I have is decades of actual experience that we have in this community. And the scenarios that I think are being kicked around are no different than someone picking up a beer in a restaurant and taking it to another table.
I think that's a violation.
Well, that's the answer to your question. So basically what the situation you described would be a violation. Commissioner Barnett.
You kind of got at it there, Mayor. All these scenarios, I remember when I was in the Liquor Commission and we made some pretty substantial adjustments to the liquor ordinance. Mayor, that was, I think, during the time you were talking about the sidewalk cafes. Sidewalk cafes an issue. There was another one that came up, which was what's going to happen, what's going to prevent people, particularly on a big place like the golf course where you can't monitor everybody, from kids on the west side getting handed booze through the bushes from their older friends who are golfing. The mayor is exactly correct when he talks about we have the experiences that we have. I think, I don't remember the number, there's 100 and some liquor license holders, and half a dozen are where we have problems. That is because the fact of the matter is that people, both residents and parents and purveyors, respect the law and try really hard to keep the environments safe and upstanding and in compliance with the law. There's no reason to believe this would be any different. We can sit here and ask for more information and dream up scenarios. We can do that, but none of them change the fact that the fears of behavior are already against the law. Those scenarios are in fact against the law right now. They're against the law 6 months ago when the Tivoli has a event and it's an all-ages show, and it's kids show up and somebody can do the exact same thing, and certainly it's more likely to go on at at a Boy Dog show than it is at a Star Wars thing or a Bambi thing.
Well, primarily because you're there.
But just the point is that these things that we're worried about are currently against the law, and every evidence is that 95% of our license holders do their very best to make sure that they are operating, and the public is engaged in behavior that's consistent with the law. They certainly could not do that here, and there could be opportunities. They're no different than the bowling alley. The bowling alley, go down there, once a month through 8 months of the year and witness my horrendous bowling, and you'll also see kids having birthday parties and playing video games and putting little racks up to roll their own bowling balls down there, and nobody's handing them booze. I think this is much ado about nothing.
Well, we're not voting on it today anyway. Commissioner Waldeck, please, no long speeches. Commissioner White will get upset.
Just want to make sure that one of the things we aren't going to bring back is nude bowling that we have.
All right, now you just took that to a place that's wrong.
Hey, it was there. So, whenever you grant a liquor license, you look at the history of someone, and if they, unless they were a complete violator before, they might not be granted a liquor license. But most of the time, the assumption is that when you grant a liquor license, that they're going to follow the law. And so, yeah, even in spite of that, there are many violations and suspensions of licenses, et cetera, et cetera. So the laws are broken, and the laws are there to protect people from being overserved, kids handling, et cetera. And one of my points is that, I don't see the controls here that we have in place for other venues. So if we're willing to relax these controls for this venue, then we ought to play fair and relax the controls that we have in other venues.
And I just don't see where you're going with that, Commissioner, in terms of controls. If you're talking about having someone standing there the whole time watching them, that doesn't happen now. The people sitting at the cellar door are not monitored the whole time they're there. I'm not quite sure what controls you're talking about.
You have people selling. People can be overserved because someone's over there. There's a long line, and you're passing out drinks, and they're taking it into the theater area. where's the wait staff that monitors that, not just passing it off to kids, but also over-serving and the other types of things?
Sure. Well, the answer is very simple. There's a point of control which monitors the over-serving, which is no different than any other establishment. There are people, last time I heard they're called ushers, that actually go into the theater. Commissioner Earl made a great point, which most movies are, 90 minutes or an hour, so 2 hours. People, by definition, are not sitting there for hours and hours and hours consuming alcohol. The place empties out and they leave.
My point is that there's not the same controls there that you have elsewhere. So if you're willing to lower the controls there, then you should play fair and lower the controls elsewhere.
I understand your point.
Park District, Rotary Fest, we even discussed at downtown management how silly it was that we have these, 2-foot-high gates or something up so that people don't pass alcohol to kids. Yeah, good point. So we ought to start looking at, if we're going to ease up in one area, then we need to play fair and ease up in other areas too.
I understand your point. I just don't agree with the premise. I think the premise is flawed, but I understand your point. Questions or comments from the audience? Please.
Not sure I should get in the middle.
Well, you started it.
Good evening. Welcome.
Thank you. Willis Johnson, President of Tivoli Enterprises, 603 Rogers Street, Downers Grove. I don't do real well from a hearing standpoint, so I may have missed some of the comments that were made, and I will try to address them. I think that the most recent one from Commissioner Waldeck, one of the controls that is built into the ordinance is a person can buy one drink. And yes, they could buy a drink, and they could take it to somebody in the auditorium, and then they could come back and buy another drink. But you can buy one drink at one time. And that was put into place to, I think, address that very concern. We are not going to be serving alcohol from the concession counter. We have, up until now, we have all of our events have been from portable bars, which is a requirement of the ordinance as it is at this moment. However, that is with this ordinance, that would no longer be a requirement. We wouldn't have to put the bars away every time we have an event. I'd like to think that I'm a responsible person. I think with a responsible company. I've lived in Downers Grove for 81 years, and my kids live here, and my grandkids live here. Not all of them, but a number of them. And I think we have had a liquor license at the Tivoli, has already been said, since 2001. And in that period of time, we have not had a violation. We have had a liquor license at Tivoli Bowl since 1982, I believe it is. We have had, I won't tell you that we haven't had a violation there. We have. I believe we've had 2. But we do try to be, it's very important to us to be responsible citizens. We do train all of our people. They have that handle any liquor. They have the licenses or the training that they're supposed to have. I think to address the concern about younger people, again, we aren't just going to serve alcohol to serve alcohol. If we have a predominantly children's event, then we would not have alcohol service. That's a choice that that's a choice that we make. I think it was brought up. The most recent example was the new Star Wars movie, where we did apply for a special event license. We certainly had a serious number of people at that event, there was no violation that I'm aware of. I think we are responsible. I think we do watch and have people. Again, our ushers are trained to watch for liquor violations. We don't want to have liquor violations any more than you do. So that's really saying more than I probably should have. But if there's any other questions or comments that I might address.
I have actually a very specific question. But versus okay. Philosophically, I have no problem with serving alcohol in movie theaters. So the basic concept I have no problem with. I also have no interest in micromanaging how you run your operation. So I agree with what Mayor Tully said on a great many points. The nub of the issue, the heart of the control is this. Under this new ordinance, if a 21-year-old walks down the aisle, sits in a seat, and gives a beer to his or her 19-year-old companion, is that a violation of the ordinance? If the answer is yes, then I'm much more comfortable, and whether they do it or not, if you think the police might be doing controlled buys, you'll take steps to stop it, even if they aren't doing those controlled buys. Just thinking they might would be an incentive. So from my point of view, like I said, I don't want to micromanage your operation. I don't want to tell you where to put the bars, how they're shaped. I don't want to tell you what movies. You know that if you're showing Snow White, that's not going to be a big market for selling beer. That's just that's fine. So I'm not interested in micromanaging how you run your business. I am philosophically in favor of the concept that this is the trend. But I want it very clear that if somehow a 19-year-old ends up with a beer watching the movie, that's a violation of the rules, no matter how they got it. Even if your server sold it to an adult, if that adult then, because the same as if at another round they pushed the beer over to the 17-year-old on the other side of the table, that's a violation. As long as that's clearly understood, I'm leaning towards doing this. But if that's not the understanding, then maybe I'm not.
As the liquor commissioner, that's my understanding.
Yeah. Okay, so there.
Yeah. Is and has been current law.
And as long as we all reaffirm that, yeah.
It actually, it did never cross my mind that there was any doubt that was the case.
If I'm understanding what you're saying, I believe at that point in time we would ask both parties to leave.
And whether they choose to do it or not, it's up to the police department. But there's a possibility that there could be controlled buys under this. And that's not my call to make. But I would ask them to. And the fact that they might be a sufficient deterrent even if they don't.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions for Mr. Johnson?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Other questions or comments from members of the audience? Thank you so much for releasing Chief Gillette so he could go to his party. Thank you. Any final questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Obviously, we're not voting on this tonight, so I appreciate the discussion. Oh, my goodness, we have Commissioner Jose. Welcome. Happy New Year.
Sure, Gillette leaves and he sneaks in the back door. We got to get better security.
I invoke my Fifth Amendment right.
We were just wrapping up that conversation, but I didn't want to...
No.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Without comment.
All right, very good. Item 8C, please.
Is an ordinance prohibiting purchase of possession of alternative nicotine products by minors, and Enzo will present this item as well.
Yes, I hope this is...
This one's much easier.
Much easier. So this is an ordinance amending Chapter 15, prohibiting the purchase and possession of alternative nicotine products by minors. This basically would mirror the prohibition against tobacco use. So it would treat both tobacco and alternative nicotine products the same. Both the definition and the restrictions mirror state law, so it will allow our officers to issue these citations pursuant to ordinance violations as opposed to charging them through state law. That is it. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Questions or comments from members of the council? Nobody wants to sell tobacco to kids? Questions or comments from members of the audience? Thank you.
That ends our first reading tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you very much. That brings us to item 9, the mayor's report. Just very quickly, I attended the quarterly executive committee meeting of the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus, which has representatives from not only different communities but also different councils of government. I was there as a representative of the DuPage Mayors and Managers Conference, and as part of the fiscal 2018 budget, Commonwealth Edison renewed its Powering Safe Communities grant program, which is going to be administered by the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus. There are grants of around $10,000 available for safety programs that municipalities may want to implement or pursue. They do not necessarily need to be energy related. I don't know if this is something necessarily we want to pursue, but I just wanted to share that with my colleagues to see if there is might be an opportunity there. Chief Gillette, we're so sorry to have kept you. I'm glad that you're officially released to your party. No need to hang out here.
No worries, no worries.
Well, it's very generous of you, sir. Thank you. So my report was just simply to share that with the council, and if there are, to staff, if there are any opportunities that might make sense. I know that Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus will be releasing a list of examples of how these funds have been used by other communities throughout the Chicago metropolitan area. So if there are any things that look like they might be of benefit to us that we might want to pursue, I just wanted to share that. And that ends my report for item 9, which brings us to item 10, which is the village manager's report. Mr. Fieldman.
Thank you, Mayor Tully. No report tonight, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Petrarca, attorney's report, item 11.
Thank you, Mayor. Only 3 items quickly to report on that will be on next week's active agenda. The first is an ordinance authorizing a special use for 4832 Highland Avenue to permit a school addition with a variation, an ordinance amending the theater license provisions, and an ordinance prohibiting the purchase and possession of alternative nicotine products by minors. That is all. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. That brings us to item 12, which is council member reports. This is an opportunity for members of the village council to either share items of interest or other goings-on in the community for the benefit of those sitting here in the audience or watching at home, or an opportunity for those who serve in liaison roles to other entities to share something with their colleagues like I just did with respect to the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus. I'll start with my left. Commissioner Barnett, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Mayor. I have no report tonight.
Thank you. Commissioner Earl, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Mayor. No report.
Thank you. I'll go back to my right. Commissioner Jose, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Mayor. I'm sorry to have been late. Had some meetings with clients I had to attend to, and wanted to make sure that I got here for at least a bit of the meeting that I could, and I'm glad that I can at least catch a bit of the party with Chief Gillette. I have no other report, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we're glad you're here. Commissioner Waldeck, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thank you. No official report, but in our time off, is it called executive time or what? The weather wasn't really great for golfing or much of anything else. And I just want to thank our police, our fire, paramedics, and public works folks, especially the public works folks, because of the miserable weather we've had below zero. It's tough to work outside. And, I know people bring up pizza delivery folks and that, but I know our folks spend a lot of time outside. I asked the village manager off the top of his head if he knew how many water main breaks we had, because I just can't imagine walking out in a river working with water in sub-zero weather. Any ideas, any ballparks? Or?
Yes, Nan will correct me if I misspeak, but it seemed to me we were notified of water main breaks about one every other day, maybe once a day during the week of the extreme cold.
Thank you. And if the past is anything, it doesn't matter whether it's old infrastructure or even new infrastructure. It happens any time of day. And so with a lot of gratitude for those folks out there who have to get out in this weather and do their job, especially if you have to deal with water. So thank you to all of them. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Wallace, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Mayor. Thank you. I'd just like to invite all residents to take District 58's strategic planning survey called Vision 58. This is on dg58.org as they move forward with some of their strategic planning. So your input is going to help shape the future of that district, so please go ahead and take that survey. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And Commissioner White, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, and no report.
And I have no further report. So with that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn, please.
So I move that the council adjourn.
Second.
All of those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, good night, and Happy New Year to all.